Oh, yeah, it's the Matt Kwazaborski Show calling you live and direct from Arlington, Virginia, where it's a kind of a cold, crisp, clear night, but nothing too crazy after we had our storm brushing through here yesterday. Trying to get the first podcast going in the year 2024. It's January 10th, 2024. Kind of crazy. And joining us before we get started, I'd like to thank Speaker Platform for hosting us. I'd like to thank Al Gore for inventing the internet. And, of course, all our loyal listeners out there. And tonight we have a special guest. Even though it's recorded, we got John Mathers coming back, my longtime co-host. What's going on, John? Happy New Year's, brother.
Hey, guys. Happy New Year. Glad to be here.
Appreciate you jumping on. We have Dave Chopka up there in Maryland wearing his Eagles gear, but his whole family is fans of Baltimore, and sounds like it might be a short but awful playoff experience for you, Dave, coming up. Happy New Year, brother.
Yeah, Happy New Year. The tables have turned since the last pod in my house.
This is true. And joining us is Mr. Terrific Tom Webster from Old Town, Alexandria, Virginia. And just a tidbit, when I first started this podcast back in 2009, Tom was my original co-host. So it was him and I for a couple of weeks there. I don't know if you remember that, Tom. What's going on, man?
I vaguely remember it. It's been a while. What I do remember is when you moved into my apartment back when you moved down to the D.C. area. And on that night, the Virginia Tech Hokies were playing Clemson. You made us dinner. And tonight, the Hokies were playing Clemson again.
There we go.
Full
there
circle.
We go. That was one of the most scariest nights. It was you and your now wife, Megan, and their best friend, Summer. And I remember being on the phone with Mama Quaz, like, oh, my God, this is scary. This is a regular season Virginia Tech basketball game, and these people are going nuts. Your dog was in a cage. And, yeah, I made dinner and probably had some wine with that, too, just to calm my nerves. So thanks for joining, Tom. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. I know I do appreciate you joining, too. We will talk Eagles, but there's some other things we can talk about going around and breaking news coming out of the college football world. The greatest college football coach that I've seen in my lifetime, Nick Saban of Alabama, is retiring. Any kind of thoughts about that?
Good riddance.
Yeah. I agree. I'm on the same page. He's a fantastic coach. I'm done. Good day.
Yeah, no tears shed by me either. But yeah, you can't argue that he's not a great coach. But man, he can rub you the wrong way if you're not a Bama fan, which I'm not.
Yeah, and me being with LSU roots, spending 10 years down there in Louisiana, kind of screwed over the Tigers. We understood when he left, he won the national championship. Goes to the Dolphins. Hey, that's what you're supposed to do in the coaching ranks. You move up. Then lied his ass off for a whole year saying he's not going to Alabama. Then goes to Alabama for 12 years, but wins 6 national titles, lost 29 games, but had 44 number one draft picks coming out of that Alabama program. So there's no doubt he knows how to coach. And I have to say he's a good guy. I saw a profile about him and what he does outside of the football field in the Alabama community. And he is a really decent guy. But like you said, on the field, he just rubs you the wrong way. And, it'll be interesting to see what Alabama does. It sort of seems like Georgia is taking over the power rankings there in the SEC lately. So we'll see where Alabama turns to. The rumor is they will pursue the Oregon head coach. So anyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He's only been there for like 2 years, right?
Yeah, that's the one rumor. I guess he has Alabama ties. I don't know. But I also found an interesting tidbit of a news clipping from 1980 that Ohio State was offering Nick Saban the job as defensive coordinator, and he was replacing Pete Carroll, who moved on to be the defensive coordinator at North Carolina and the Tar Heels way back in 1980. And you saw the news about Pete Carroll also retiring today. But this is not why we're here. We're here to talk about what in the flying F happened to our Philadelphia Eagles. I put the first question out there in the topics. We're going to turn to Dave to answer this question. The question I put to you is, if the Eagles lose on Monday night, no matter the effort they put on the football field, do you fire Nick Sirianni?
And I don't think it's a yes/no, honestly, because I do think it matters how they look. If they look like they've looked the past 5-6 weeks, then I'm 100% behind firing them, even if they don't have somebody in mind. If they play well, and I don't know how you can play well and not win, but if they play well and lose, I guess I wouldn't be too upset if they gave him one more year. But it's just such a disaster the past month and a half, and a lot of it seems to be on coaching to me, and it's got to start with Nick. I mean, you can't just always blame the coordinators. So he's got to shoulder a lot of this, right? So certainly, like I said, if they lose looking like they have, I'm okay if they fire him. But I do think it does matter how they look.
Yeah, and they've looked, for our listeners out there, they have looked very listless, I think, since the Buffalo game. I think the Buffalo game took a lot out of that team for whatever reason, in a physical way, and then mentally and emotionally after that, what the 49ers in Dallas did to them. They've lost 5 of their last 6, and they've lost 2 out of their last 3 in 3 games they're supposed to win against inferior opponents. John, turn the question over to you. Eagles come out, they lose. No matter how they play, are you moving on from Nick Sirianni?
Yes, I am. 100%. Why? I think if you go into another year of this, you're going to have to get new coordinators anyway. So might as well, start fresh. You're going to lose a lot of players on both offensively, defensively. A lot of quote unquote leaders. This team has been here for a long time, so might as well start fresh, start clean, and start to rebuild 1 year earlier than probably you do it anyway.
Tom, from an outsider's perspective, looking at it, what do you think? Looking at it, what the Eagles should do with Nick Sirianni, given his track record, he's made the playoffs in his first 3 years, made the Super Bowl in year 2. The team has fallen on hard times. Would you recommend that we move on as our consultant, our outside Philadelphia consultant?
I mean, I would say coming in and seeing the last few weeks, I just can't believe how bad they're playing. And when they were playing so well, and it was just like, I just can't believe that this is the same team. I mean, that offense on this past Sunday came out and did nothing. And I didn't, just watch probably the first part of the game because I was interested in watching Tyrod Taylor from Virginia Tech.
Yes.
So I was watching that game. And but I would say you keep him. And again, it's outsider's perspective. Yep. Not that I'm right, but I would say you keep him just because something has gone wrong. It doesn't mean it can't be fixed, especially in the off season. If you go out there and you do lose significantly in Tampa, who's not that great. I mean, they won 9-0 over, was it Carolina?
Yeah.
So, or whatever, it was a close score. That's my perspective. I would say you should keep them and try and fix it, unless it's just absolutely horrible game and just tough to come back from.
Yeah, I would sort of lean in that way. I look at the whole year in the body of work. It's like, is this just a shitty year? He's had to replace 2 coordinators. He lost Shane Steichen to the Colts, lost Jonathan Gannon to the Arizona Cardinals. We lost some very key players on defense, Marcus Epps in the safety position, TJ Edwards at the linebacker position, Gauthier White at the linebacker position, some other key guys that weren't really replaced. You look at Brandon Morrow, who's one of the linebackers who came in. He was the worst rated starting linebacker last year, ironically with the Chicago Bears, and we let TJ Edwards walk to Chicago Bears, who's the 3rd rated overall linebacker, without even a chance to even try to keep him. And maybe TJ wanted to go back to Chicago's hometown team, but early on in his career, the Eagles usually do a good job locking him up. Your supervisors are supposed to put you in a position to succeed. And I think overall, they've let Nick down this year. Replacing 2 coordinators is tough. We thought it was going to be a seamless transition to Brian Johnson. He was, buddy-buddy with Jalen Hurts. Maybe that's the issue. I heard Shane Steichen was a hard coach. And then Jonathan Gannon kind of did what he did, saying he was going to stay, then leaves to Arizona and made us miss out on experienced coach Vic Fangio. Now, and I've said this in the chat before, if he's lost the respect of the players, And we go to this chemistry. I know, John, you and I have a little different opinion on how important chemistry is, and that's okay. Then I think he has to go. And I point to one instance in a public way was what happened after the Kansas City Chiefs game. After the Chiefs, we go in and we barely won that game. Remember, Scandez Walker, or whatever his name, drops that short touchdown pass. But as the Eagles are leaving the field, Nick Sirianni starts taunting the Chiefs fan. He may even cursed at him. And I don't remember exactly if he said, F you Kansas City fans and all this other stuff. But veteran players will look at that and be like, all right, dude, it's enough. Your antics on the sidelines are okay. You want to yell at the players, yell at the opposing coaches, ref, that's okay. But when you start taunting the other team's fans in their home field, I think that could have been the straw that broke the camel's back if he has lost the locker room. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly seems like something's going on, right? I don't know what, who would decide that he's lost the locker room. I mean, all the guys are saying the right things in the media, but
right.
It doesn't. Yeah, I don't know that you can trace it to any one thing. He does act like a jackass on the sidelines, which we loved when we were 10-1, and now it just looks dumb. And so there is, you don't want the coaches to change how they are willy nilly, but he probably does need to be more cognizant of it, and it certainly isn't helping right now. So I don't know. I mean, I would totally agree with you, Matt. If he's lost the locker room, just like any coach, really, you kind of got to move on, unless you're 1-11, and you're wanting to get rid of the whole team. The personnel aren't there, but I think we would all say we seem to have talented personnel. So moving on from the coach in that case sounds better than just trying to start from scratch, through trades in the draft or whatever.
I think his antics on the sideline are I think exactly like Dave's saying, like when you're 10-1, everyone likes it. It's a Twitter video that everyone shares, and the Philly fans thoroughly enjoy it. I think when you start to taunt fans like the way he did it, it was like it's super immature. Like it's not something that I would see, a Nick Saban or a Bill Belichick to do, because we were talking about Nick Saban earlier. But I don't think that's a reason that you lose the locker room because you're taunting the opposing fans. I think you lose the locker room when you're doing things, when you're calling plays, when you're making decisions that are affecting outcomes of games that the players on the field don't think are working, or you're making a decision to make Sean Desai, sit in the corner and have Matt Patricia be the new guy. I think those decisions that sort of backfire cause you to lose the locker room. I don't think it's like sideline antics per se, because we've all seen guys like Sean McVay get super excited, run down the field, and chest bump a receiver for catching a touchdown. I think that stuff's fine. I think it's these decisions that have been made between the defensive coordinator issue. There's something going on with AJ Brown. There's some other stuff that's obviously going wrong that I think is causing these concerns that the players I think have internally. But I don't think it's what he does on the sideline.
Good point. And I don't know, Tom, we talk about AJ Brown. I do want to touch on that because we were chatting about that yesterday in the group chat. And just to bring up the speed, Tom, AJ Brown didn't talk to the media for a while, let the other players speak, Jalen and the other leaders, and then came out and gave a fairly supportive locker room press conference, if you will, about Nick Sirianni, and the coaching staff. And he said that the coaches have played 0 snaps. It's on us. I have Nick's back, kind of thing like that. And I thought to hear a refreshing voice take a stand like that, even though he didn't do it right away, he took some weeks to collect his thoughts, was a good sign for the new Eagles and the new leadership. You're not hearing from Kelsey, Lane, BG, Fletcher, these guys. But, John, you didn't really like the fact that he stayed quiet for so long from what we gathered in the chat yesterday.
Yeah, no, I didn't like it at all. I think when you're paid to be the quote-unquote number one wide receiver, $100 million contract, we traded draft picks for you, I think we expect a certain amount of, I don't want to use the word dignity in class because that's not it, right? But you're a captain, you're getting paid top dollar. When something's going on, like I expect you to talk to the media, whether it's short and contrite or short and not getting in trouble, not getting fined. Just do your job, and that's what these guys get paid to do. When he decided to sort of make it a spectacle and not talking week after week, as we all know as Philly fans, it starts to it's like a drug to Philly media. So they write stories about it. They try to figure out what it is. They start to make up stories, and it just causes more and more drama. And even before the paparazzi, as Brandon Graham called it, when they came over to his locker, Brandon Graham was quoted as saying, "Oh, did AJ tweet again? Look at the paparazzi surrounding him." Again, other players are noticing it. I just think it brings up, it just causes more problems than it should. And you're already, eating shit, losing 5 out of 6 games. You don't need extra crap. Like last year, we didn't have extra crap, right? That's why we were so successful. We were winning games. They were having fun. There wasn't drama. Once you add the drama every year in a Philly season, it never ends out well. There's always something. The TO year, issues with McNabb had numerous issues and so on and so forth. It just causes drama, and that's the stuff that really tears teams apart. And as a captain, and again as a number 1 wide receiver, who's getting paid that kind of money, I just didn't think it was the right sort of approach to take to the situation.
Dave or Tom, you want to weigh in? Dave?
Yeah, I think, AJ's, I don't know. I don't think he's very mature. And I could totally be wrong about that, because I know that press conference he did have, I'm kind of agreeing with Matt on that. I thought that was really good. What he said, the way he said it, I thought was really positive. But then, he goes out and fumbles on the first damn catch of the next game. That was ridiculous. And then I swear, I think he was faking that knee injury, or at least making it worse than it was, because he was embarrassed that he fumbled. And I'm sure he does have an injury, but so to me, I think it's just him not knowing what to do. I think the problem, and I don't know any more than anybody else, but Jalen Hurts got to do something. He doesn't seem to be the leader I thought he was before the season, and he's just now a dude, and he's a freaking franchise quarterback. He's got $250 million contract, and he is not stepping up in my mind. He might be doing it behind closed doors, but I don't hear anything from that guy. And I want to be hearing from that guy. What the hell is going on with the blitzes? He ought to be the one, and maybe, I haven't kept up this week, but, he ought to be part of the media presence in going out and explaining stuff, or, firing up folks. So I put it more on Hurts than AJ. Personally.
From outsider's consultant perspective, Tom, what do you think? Thoughts about if you saw anything
from the
about
outside?
AJ? Yeah.
From the outside, what I'd say is to what Dave said, that he doesn't know more than anybody else. He knows more than me. He definitely, when it comes to Philadelphia Eagles, he knows a lot more than me.
You're somebody, Tom. You are somebody.
Yeah, I am. I'm just way on the outside.
Well, you were also our resident football expert. If anyone knows anything about football in this world, it's you. And not talking about American football, but soccer. Like, you are the go-to guy for that stuff. So that is, a lot about football. You know more about football than we do. We know American football from Philadelphia perspective, but
that's right.
Yeah. I think
that's the next podcast.
Yeah, we'll do a Leeds one. You can educate me and us about Leeds. John, we talked a little bit in the chat about, does the Philly media wear our players down and wear our opinions down? That is a great topic, and I do want to touch upon that a little bit, even though it wasn't on our topics list. Sorry about that. But I think you bring up a good point. And to me, the Philadelphia media is this. And we know Les Bow, and we know I have a little bit of a relationship with Les Bow, a longtime Eagles beat writer. But these longtime guys like Bowen and Eskin, Marcus Hayes does stuff to raise the thing. But they've outlasted all these coaches. They've outlasted all the players. And I still think they try to get a rise out of it, knowing that they're going to get clicks or readerships. But do you think that it weighs it down in time? You can also, join this conversation about Washington sports. Over the years, like is the media, these guys who are longtime presence in the media, the Post or the Times or whatever, do they have a sense of entitlement that, yeah, I'm going to outlast you, so we can just start talking about stuff and trying to wear you down, either as a player or as a coach?
Yeah, I guess I'll just very, very quickly with Washington sports, and what John was probably saying earlier is that's what DC sports writers are about. The Redskins Commanders. That's what their focus is on. They're all about that. And if there's a vacuum where someone's not saying something, they're filling the void. So that's probably why it's better to have, be working with a PR person, someone to kind of coach you to at least say something and be out there, especially if you are a leader on the team, because they'll fill the vacuum. And then the vacuum, everybody else in sports talk will focus on that with football in the DC area. That'd be my only, which would be somewhere. That's the only sport that would be anywhere near similar to Philadelphia sports.
And John, I want to give you a chance to kind of explain your point the other day in the chat. Does the Philadelphia media wear down our coaches and athletes?
I mean, I think the AJ Brown thing is like a perfect example, right? He just didn't talk, and everyone wrote articles about it. And what does the Philly media do? Well, they got to write articles so all four of us can click the link or read the newspaper or however we intake the media today, watch it, read it, soak it up, and then come to our sort of own conclusions. But really, at the end of the day, we're not getting anything because, no one's talking. So we just create some sort of story, or it's, AJ doesn't get along with Jalen because they're fighting on the sideline and now he's not talking. And you're like, this becomes a soap opera before it even, turns into anything because he's not talking. Like, and to your point, Matt, like, I think if AJ would have came out the first time and said exactly what he was going to say, what he waited 3 weeks to say, we're not talking about it anymore. But since he decided to wait 2 to 3 weeks to talk about it, it became a story, and it just didn't have to be. And I think that the media, especially, and to the Philadelphia Eagles' credit and the coaches, for years, Andy Reid, you guys are older than me, but Andy Reid didn't give much either. It was those guys that were pounding the pavement, the Les's, the Marcus Hayes's, the Missinellis of the world, that were really trying to get stories to get a behind the scenes look. And when today, in today's media world, when coaches aren't really given sound bites, it's hard. And I understand why they do it, because their job is to get the clicks and get the people to buy the newspapers and so on and so forth. But at some point, I find guys like Jeff McLean who sometimes I feel like irk players and coaches. You can kind of see it in their faces when he asks a question. He's like, they think he's trying to like twist them, but he's really just trying to get something out of them in order to, write a story that is factual and informative. And instead it's like one word smirky answers, joking around, and like they can't really do their job. So maybe that stuff happens closed doors when they're like cameras down, they have off the record conversations. But I do think it's very difficult for coaches and even players at some point to succeed in this town because of how difficult the media is. I mean, you guys saw I'm pretty sure one of the topics here is talking about the Flyers, but you've seen sort of what happened with the Flyers yesterday and what sort of that has caused and different ways, the directions the media took it and different stories they made up. It's a tough place to play, and I love it for that. But at some point, I think we do create some of the problems. Like, did 9 people, 10 people, 12 people need to go to T.O.'s house with a camera to watch him do sit-ups in the driveway? Like, we really didn't get anything from that other than made drama. Yeah. So I don't know. That's my thought on it. It made me really think about it when we were sort of texting back and forth. I really hope that somebody from the media does like an introspective about how difficult it is to do media in Philly sports, like the flip side of it, because I'd be really interested.
Dave, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I think, I mean, Philly's got to be the greatest town to be an athlete in when you're winning. And it's got to be the worst town to be in when you're losing. I think that is, from the media perspective and the fans. The fans are, we're all just as. I mean, we feed the media; they feed us back and forth, and it's definitely part of the culture. And I think it's really. I think we all take some pride in it, being crazy, rabid fans, good and bad, right? I mean, this past month, I can't imagine. I mean, I'm so furious at this team, furious, and 2 months ago I was happy as could be, and it's the same with the Phillies and the Sixers and all that. I mean, it's just how it is in this town, and there's it's definitely different than Washington, Baltimore, which I'm most familiar with outside of Philly. But
right.
I'm sure there's other cities. I'm sure you could say similar things, but there can't be a more fun place to be an athlete when you're winning, and it can't be much worse when you're losing, I think. And that does affect certain guys more than others, for sure. Some guys can handle it, and some guys can't. And we've seen it over the years. I mean, and we'll continue to see it. I think we're seeing it now. I mean, I don't think Darius Slay can handle it. I don't think A.J. Brown can handle negative criticism very well. And there's a few other guys on the team. And so, it's just part of the thing, right? And I'm sure it's difficult when you're the GM and the coach to find the guys, that are going to be fine either way, good or bad. But I do think it is real. I think John's right. I mean, this is a real thing, and I don't think it's helping currently. But I also don't want to be all kumbaya when the team looks like it does.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, the criticism is warranted. I think we've grown up where the media, remember too that Philadelphia is the first ever sports radio town, right? It's where sports radio was created back in the 80s with WIP. And by the way, we're the 5,383,427,000 podcast just about Philadelphia sports. So like I told Tom yesterday in a text, no one's listening, man. We're just part of the vacuum. But I think the media does take the entitlement that they're going to be here and they're going to outlast the coaches. And if they don't like it, they have some sort of influence to turn the perspective on there. It's like Nick Sirianni comes in, first press conference is awful, gives that speech after the 7th game about the flower pot, and then all of a sudden they're great. And now it's like, well, what do you really do here? It's like, to me, it is very interesting to see, what they think and how they're trying to turn the waves. It's not just the print media. It is the 5 million podcasts. It is the 2 radio stations. And those guys, if they don't like someone, they will definitely try to do the best to turn the opinion, the public opinion on that coach or player. Sometimes well-deserved, but sometimes I think it's a little bit too much of an entitlement from the media because, like I said, they're going to be here whether the coach stays or goes. I don't know. And I think Nick's getting a little bit of a questionable rap, but a little bit more of a bad rap because, like I said, I don't think all of these issues are just on him and if you're ready to go. But, John, to your point, you're ready to get rid of Nick Sirianni no matter how they play on Monday night if they lose. So who are some of your top candidates coming into, like, who would you like to see come in and think they can right the ship, so to say, and get this team all functioning as a unit?
I mean, off the top of my head, someone like Mike Vrabel I like. Had success in Tennessee, depending on which way you want to measure success. Went to playoff game, I think 3 out of 5 years. He's the type of coach that he reminds me of Dan Campbell a little bit. He's a little like hard, tough-nosed. Yeah, it doesn't seem like he takes much shit, but he also doesn't seem like the type of guy who's going to be doing what Nick does on the sidelines. And I just want to go back to that real quick because I think it's an important point about Nick and how you're saying he gets a little bit unfair, whatever you want to call it. I think his antics, some of the things that he does, although look like they are having fun with the guys and whatever, we're probably not used to that. It comes off very smug. And I think that's why he gets a bad rap. That's why I think a lot of people turn on him in the Philly sports fandom so quickly because they're like, really, this guy's like a nerd. Like, why is he doing this? He's acting like a pompous prick that you'd like see at a bar that you want to punch out in South Philly. Like, that's not how our coach should act. Our coach should be like Andy Reid and just like, you know, not tell you very much, but have a little quip here and there, but that's it. And he's all business. So that's just my thing on Nick. I want a Dan Campbell, Mike Vrabel, young guy who isn't some OC who, the last 2 years, everyone talks about the OC from the Lions, Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I don't want Ben Johnson. Like, the problem that you're seeing in the NFL is, in my opinion, there a lot of offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators get hired as head coaches, but they're not head coaches. Right. They're offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators. That next step is more babysitting and logistical stuff, less of like X's and O's. There are some head coaches, Kyle Shanahan, Mike McCarthy now calling plays, and that works for them. For me, like, I want a head coach that if he's a defensive coordinator, that he's focused on the defense. Hire a really talented head offensive coordinator and let him run the offense. It worked swimmingly when Doug was here, when we had Jim Schwartz, right? He took care of the defense. Doug had his guys, and they worried about the offense. And I think that's how it should really work. I think when you start to get like these guys who, are offensive geniuses, and you put them in head coaching positions, and then they hire an offensive coordinator, it's like, it never works. It's like really odd to me how that never sort of works together. And then from a defensive perspective, like, I'm totally cool with going with a Raheem Morris type defensive coordinator guy.
From the Rams.
I just don't know if it's Raheem Morris. Like, is it a Leslie Frazier type defensive minded coach that we should go after? I think our biggest issue right now is the defense. So I'd rather focus on the defense and find the, up and coming, smarter offensive coordinator to fill that role, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave.
Yeah, I think John's right. I mean, a Vrabel type would be good. It is a little frustrating in hindsight, right? And we had Steichen, just got rid of Nick last year. We could have kept Steichen, could have been the head coach. He seems like he's got the right mentality to be a good head coach, and he's obviously a good offensive coordinator too. And I mean, we're shitting on Nick, and I think a lot of it is deserved. But we did go to the Super Bowl last year. Should have won it, could have won it for sure. And Jonathan Gannon didn't help any of that. So all that being said, I don't have a specific guy in mind. I mean, like I said, Vrabel, if they got him, I'd be totally fine with that. And then, I don't know enough about all the different coordinators who are out there. I don't think Belichick would be interested. I don't think I'd be interested in Belichick. I think he's just too old, honestly. I mean, but that would be so fun to watch him in the Philly media, though. I would get a kick out of that. But yeah, I mean, I think, I certainly don't think we have anybody on staff that we'd be promoting. And I did think about Frank Reich a little bit, but I think him and Nick being so close, I don't think that Howie. I don't know. I don't think Frank would take it if Nick got fired, but who knows? I mean, I think you turn back time, I think Reich could have done a good job. I never thought he was a bad head coach. I know he didn't do as well as anybody expected in Carolina, but that's a friggin' dumpster fire down there. So I don't think anybody could have done anything.
Yeah, and he also got fired from Indianapolis as well, but he's playing for probably two of the most volatile owners in the NFL, not named Jerry Jones and formerly of Washington, Daniel Snyder. So, yeah, Tom, do you want to? Okay, Tom, I wanted to ask you. I know you really haven't followed the Commanders, but they do have new ownership. The wonderful 76ers New Jersey Devils owner, Josh Harris, right there, John. John loves it. Are you back on board with this? Are you looking at it? But at the same time, I know how you feel about it. I'm not asking you to get into those parts. But you're looking for, they're changing everything. Is there a coach out there that maybe might get you excited for the Commanders again if they went out and hired somebody, or a football operations guy?
If they hired Frank Beamer, I'd be there tomorrow. Or if they brought Gibbs back, that would be my thing. Yeah, no, Matt knows I'm a very disgruntled, just about very much Snyder. And then when we lost the name, I was like, all right, I'm good. That was the only thing I had for the team, even while Snyder was there. So yeah, I'm really not following it all that much. They'll do what they do, and I mean, if they can honestly do something about the name and the uniforms, you might have me and a bunch of other people back. So just kind of not. I mean, it's definitely interesting just in the perspective of I listen to some podcasts just to kind of hear about that aspect, which I care about with the team. And I hear him talking about the fact that what was it? Bieniemy is still there. So everybody else is fired, but he had a 2-year contract. So they talked about the fact that when they hire a new coach, they're going to be like, all right, you want Bieniemy.
Right.
So that's going to be interesting to see because he is under contract. I'm sure the coach will, have the decision to keep him or not. Right. I can't imagine they would make him stay. But that is kind of interesting to see what they would do. As for the Eagles, if you all move on, I mean, Vrabel's fantastic. That would be good. And whoever, if you don't have Sirianni, you somehow have to keep those Italian Philadelphia hats that you had this year during one of the games. That was awesome to see the Italian flag on it. It was just, I thought that was, even I'm not Italian American, I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, and Tom is referring to the fact that Nick Sirianni and our security guy, Big Dom, don't know his last name, Delasucci or whatever, they had little Italian flags on the side of their sweatshirts, and that's pretty cool. I do appreciate you sharing your thoughts, Tom. I know it's a sensitive subject with you, but with Washington, sure. And I respect it, but I do appreciate that. I think, for me, Vrabel's an interesting guy because I'm looking at his career record, and I think I put this in the chat last night. The record of him as a coach started off pretty good. Kind of went a little bit downhill. To me, is a little Jeff Fisher-esque. Although he's been dealt kind of a bad hand with the quarterbacks. He's had to deal with Marcus Mariota, Malik Willis, Ryan Tannehill, Will Levis. He hasn't had the greatest quarterback situation to work with. Had some great defenses. But I'm hopefully that he's not being... Because Jeff Fisher was the same way. He was always that hot assistant, and then he got hired, and then all of a sudden he just turned into this mediocre coach. Everyone makes fun of Jeff Fisher because he always goes 7-9, 8-8 every year. So that is interesting. Belichick's going to remember he's got a chance to break the all-time coaching record. And if he leaves New England and they get Vrabel up to New England, which is the rumor, it will be interesting because he's the type of guy like a Sean Payton that can call a team up and say, hey, I want to coach you. Now, Patricia, who is horrible as a defensive coordinator that he's been, the groundwork is there for a 3-4 defense. And that's what they run in New England, right? The Philadelphia Eagles, for all of our lifetime, except for the Chip Kelly experiment, we're always 4-3, 3-4. Patricia could have the two guys from Georgia, Davis and Carter be your nose guard, your nose tackle. Reddick and Sweat on the ends. They drop back into coverage, which is what Patricia has been doing, by the way, dropping Reddick in coverage, Sweat into coverage for whatever reason, who knows. Then can build from what looks like a promising young defensive back guys, Eli from Alabama, Eli Ricks, Ringo, so on and so forth. That sort of groundwork, it might be there. Yes. For Belichick, Patricia reunion.
I don't understand how an 11-sack guy is back in coverage. It makes absolutely no sense to me. I mean, I'm not a huge, X's and O's, but I don't get it. It makes no sense.
Rich is just smarter than everybody.
Our linebackers can't even cover guys.
Well, that's why they're doing it. That's exactly why they're doing it. Well, it's not working, but that's why.
I mean, I'd rather have my 11-sack guy try to attack. That's what he's so good at. He's not known for, yes, can he do it? Sure. But as we saw last week when Josh Sweat drops in coverage or I forget who it was and Tyrod Taylor sort of ran, his job was to stay with that receiver or something. And he didn't because his instincts are go after the quarterback. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but I don't think Belichick's coming here. I think that Howie and Jeffrey have so much control over this place that they're not gonna try to have Chip Kelly 2.0 in here. It's not gonna work. They're gonna learn from their mistakes.
Yeah. I just channel my Central European, Eastern European conspiracy theories about football into the Belichick thing. Yeah, I mean, if you move on from Nick, you got to bring obviously someone in here that has a head coaching experience. I don't think you can do that because the Eagles were an absolute mess when Sirianni was the second last head coach hired before I forget who the Texans hired and they fired after 1 year, which I thought was a sin. But if you're going to get rid of a coordinator, say Brian Johnson, who's rumored to interview with the Panthers, and I put this into the chat, if you had to keep one coordinator, which one is it? Is it Patricia or Johnson? And I'll just give my opinion, get rid of Patricia, but get like a Ron Rivera in here, someone that has head coaching and that can, like you said, John, just focus solely on get that, because that defense is so disjointed. The linebackers don't know what the defensive backs are doing. The safeties don't know what the corners are doing. And like you said, why is Hassan Reddick, whose natural instinct is to rush the passer, is dropping in the pass. Then when he can't get to the guy, he runs to the quarterback, and boom, Virginia Tech great Tyrod Taylor completes a 45-yard pass. I mean, to me, you need that experienced defensive coordinator coming in if Nick does stay around.
Yeah, like a guy like Dan Quinn, who literally just in Dallas is the last 2 years just running that defense. D'Amico Ryans did it for San Francisco for a little bit. Saleh did it. Like those are and Shanahan just took care of the offense.
Right.
He's the offensive minded guy. I think if you're going to go in that direction, like that's the way to do it. The one thing I'd like to ask you guys is, we talked about Frank Reich. What would your thoughts be if Nick stays and Brian Johnson leaves and you bring in a Frank Reich? Like, to me, I'd love to hear your opinions on that. Like,
Dave?
Yeah, I was in favor of that when Frank Reich got fired, just to bring him in as a consultant. And I know then that totally screws up the locker room with basically you've undercut Brian Johnson, but he did the same thing with Sean Desai. So he obviously doesn't care about that. So
why stop now?
What's that?
Why stop now? Right?
Yeah, right. And Sean Desai is still a defensive coordinator. Did you know that? But I'd be fine with that. I think that could work. Reich did a good job with certainly with Nick Foles, but even with Carson Wentz. That first year in Indy, he did a good job, with Phil Rivers. I think Carson Wentz kind of cost him his job in Indy, and then like we talked about, Panthers were just a disaster, and I don't think Belichick in his heyday would have done any better down there. And who knows, talent evaluation, picking Bryce Young over whoever, but it was just craziness. So yeah, I'd be totally cool with that idea. I bet that probably could work.
So I'll throw the question back to you. Are you ready for Jalen Hurts to have another offensive system to learn and give him a year of learning that in his first or second year in this extension? John, I'll throw that to you. Are you okay with that? I
mean, listen, this is that's the other part of the NFL that stinks, right? When you're successful, you lose coordinators. It's very rare that the coordinator stays longer than 2 or 3 years. If you get good, you stay, you get another, you move up, you get a head coaching job, or if you stink, you go into the Rolodex of bad coordinators. If you're going to give guys $255 million, call them your franchise quarterback, you're given that kind of money in that contract knowing that they're talented, they got a good head on their shoulders, they can get coached, they can take coaching, and if they got to run around with one shoe off, they can do it, So yes, I think that get used to it. But again, like my argument to that, Matt, is Nick Sirianni goes up the podium and says, "This is my offense. This is my offense. This is my offense." Well, Jalen's been in that offense for 3 years now. So if Frank Reich comes here, it's still Nick's offense, right? Hypothetically speaking. So whether they add wrinkles here and there, which I think they need to do, I think you just have to be. I think Jalen will be fine to answer your question. I just think that you just hope that you had like that vision for him. And that's why you gave him that contract. Otherwise, I don't know why you have him here.
Well, my point being is that if you bring in a Frank Reich, you throw out Nick's offense and you put his offense in, which is pretty much the Dougie P offense, which we all are very familiar with. Speedy wide receiver, guy over the middle, things like that. But if Frank's going to come in here and run Nick's offense, then I think I would be more open to that in that way. I like I said when I prefaced the question about do you fire Nick depending if they play hard on Monday night? No, it's just a shitty year. Brian Johnson, because it's the same offense. Like what? It makes no sense of how they've just backtracked. Jalen's been hurt. Defenses have taken away the edge on the Eagles' offense. As soon as Jalen rolls out to the edge, they're crashing down. Or when that little tight end, little screen that used to work, that's been taken away. And we saw that in the New England game, game 1. And then Brian Flores, the Belichick disciple, did it in game 2. I think this offense can work because it's the same personnel.
Here's the thing. It's pretty much black and white. If they lose and we keep Nick Sirianni, they're going to tell Brian Johnson to go take the head coaching job or go somewhere else. They're going to do the same thing with those defensive coordinators.
I'm not so sure.
I don't. If Brian Johnson already looked at last year as a head coaching candidate, and now he's looked at a head coaching candidate, and now the offense has digressed, how can you literally field a team next year and say, we're keeping the same guy? It was just a bad year. They can't do that. They won't do that. Same thing with the defense. The defense was a colossal disaster. You're not gonna demote Deshaun Desai or do whatever you did with him in his first year, and then he's not coming back.
No.
And then Patricia has gotten arguably worse.
Right.
The defense is arguably worse. So you're going to have to just fill those two positions. So it's either you fill those two positions or you just wipe the slate clean. Like they're not going to come back with, I don't think they're going to come back with the Michigan defensive coordinator and, I'm going to use Ben Johnson, but not Ben Johnson, another up and coming young OC to fill that hole and go into 2024-25 season with that. I just don't see it because you're a lame duck year at that point anyway. And then you're going to clean house anyway. So you fire a guy halfway through the season and it was like a big mess. So you just wipe it clean. It's set up that way perfectly.
You're right. It is set up that way. I do agree with you on that point. Absolutely. Confidence level going into Monday night, boys. What do you think, Tom? What's your confidence level? The Eagles will beat Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rashad White down there in Tampa. We're supposed to be, by the way, storming again. Another rainy game for the Eagles.
Yeah, I think the Eagles will get off the schneid, and I think they'll win. I think it's going to be a win for the Eagles.
Thanks, Tom.
Eagles.
John, Dave?
Yeah, Dave.
All right. Confidence level, extremely low. I don't see how it can be any other way. Honestly, I think it's a coin flip. Tampa sucks, but so do we. So I think it's going to be 21-20, and I don't know who's going to get to 21. I'll say Eagles just because you got to have a little faith. I just hope we don't have to go to San Fran if we do win, because that actually might be worse than just losing to Tampa.
Yeah.
That's
John?
a great point. I'm actually hoping that one of the 7-6 seeds wins, so then I don't have to worry as much. Listen, it's win or go home. There's a lot of veterans on this team. I think they have more talent than the Buccaneers. They really have to win this game. Otherwise, there's a lot of people that are going to lose their jobs, whether it be players or coaches. So you might as well give it the old college try and try to win. I think it's a close game, like Dave said. It's a point or a field goal. Vegas has it as 3. It started at 1. It's already starting to feel like they kind of know something. I think Eagles win.
Okay.
If they don't, it's going to be a dark next couple months.
Agreed. Yeah, I have no confidence going into this game. I don't think they can if they can't shut down the Arizona receivers, there's no way they're shutting down Hall of Famer Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and the run defense. Like I don't think it's going to be the offense's fault. But that being said, as you know, all of my rationale goes out the door on kickoff, as most of us do, and I just start never thinking they can lose no matter what. That's 21-0. Now I'll get a few onside kicks here and there. You never know. Get that rain, that fumble in the rain. But anyway, no, I have no confidence. I couldn't believe the effort against Arizona and then the Giants. It was just, for me, just sad to see. Like but that Buffalo game wore them out physically, and then San Francisco and Dallas just took their heart, and they haven't been able to regain that situationally. And then when you have Bradbury getting picked on in Seattle for 92 yards, something's got to change. You got to be a coach and be like, get him out of here. Like, get someone in there and make a freaking stop. Someone has to step up to this. And it's funny, I talked to my buddy Dave and Dave Rizzo, the Giants fan. He's beside himself like we are. He's like, you guys have too much talent. And I was like, Dave, they just don't want to play. He's like, they got to right the ship. I can't believe they're calling for Sirianni's head already. I'm like, yeah. And you guys have Brian Dable up there, and I know it's not going so well for Dable either. But that last game against the Eagles does help Dable's cause. Anyway, so no confidence. We're kind of 3-1, 2.5 if Nick keeps his job, depending on the effort on Monday night. That's good. Let's go to the league a little bit, and I appreciate you guys staying on the podcast. What are you looking for around the league? I mean, there's some great matchups this weekend and some great storylines. But the first thing I want to touch upon is FU NFL for putting one playoff game behind the paywall. Like, that is just ridiculous that they're doing this. And I'm not talking about you, the four of us, who can afford to pay the $6 to go to Peacock and have all these streaming services. I'm talking about just the average football fan that maybe are in lower income levels who have to rely on network TV, which includes ESPN, to watch these games. And they're going to put what should be a very competitive game, depending on the weather, behind a paywall. I mean, it's absurd, and it really pisses me off.
Keep paying your quarterbacks $300 million, and this is what happens. That's it. You need TV contracts, man. That's it. We ask for this stuff, unfortunately.
That's why we can't watch boxing on TV anymore. It's all pay-per-view.
That's a great point.
Yeah, it's disappointing. I mean, I have a 1-month Peacock subscription that we got because my wife is a Bills fan. So we have that for when they played, a couple weeks ago on Peacock. So we have that, but it's unfortunate. As for this weekend, that is probably the prime game I'm looking forward to the most is the Bills against the Steelers. So that should be fun. See which Bills team actually shows up. But the Browns too. I mean, that's just the Joe Flacco thing. It's just so hysterical. It's just that's going to be fun to see.
John, anything to say about Joe Flacco?
I'm totally on board with Joe. I'm going to be watching Joe.
John, you have some good stories about Joe, though.
Yeah, Joe and I go way back. I'll be rooting for him this weekend, though. That's probably the game that I will be glued to the most. That and probably the Packers Cowboys game. I feel like I got a sneaky suspicion about that one. We'll see if I'm right about it, but.
Well, tell us a little bit about your story with Joe Flacco. These guys don't know it. I know it.
So Joe Flacco grew up a town across from me. I used to play against him in high school basketball. I have some of the newspaper clippings around of me going against Joe. He obviously turned out to be the much better athlete. As I sit here talking to you guys, but yeah, we and his parents actually walk by the house every day. They're avid walkers, so he's a local boy here. Everyone loves him. I have a little bit of I'll root for him this weekend. This weekend I'll root for him, but
Well, he's beloved here in Baltimore, as you know.
Dave, any games that you're looking forward to? Any kind of predictions? Any upsets?
Yeah, I honestly, I mean, looking at all the games, I think our game is probably the worst. But Kansas City, Miami, I mean, that one looks pretty good. And I don't know. I think it's supposed to be like -2 degrees or something. So I do think Miami is not going to have fun in that type of weather. But that game, in addition to all the other games that you guys are talking about, I do think that one would be pretty good. I mean, Kansas City's looked awful, not as awful as us, but not much better. But with Mahomes, I think everybody always expects him to do what he's got to do, and he's proven it many times. So, but yeah, that would be the game I would be looking at the most.
Yeah, but you guys have the best storyline though is the Detroit Lions, first time in the playoffs in 30 years versus Matt Stafford, who comes back to Detroit, takes a Rams team in there that I think can pull the upset, mainly because I think going back to Campbell, he coaches a little bit too much with emotion. That could cost him a game. Sean McVay doesn't. Stafford knows how to play on that turf. They're equally as talented. Excuse me, they just had some injuries to those key positions. And I think Sean McVay versus Dan Campbell, and I think that's going to be a huge, huge fun matchup. The Miami matchup is interesting because Miami also played outdoors last year in Buffalo, opening day, and it was similar conditions. And if Miami had a starting quarterback, they would have beat Buffalo that day because they got away from that, like, let's throw it all around the field, zip, zap, zoop, and played very conservatively. They just started their third-string quarterback who played okay, but should have beat Buffalo that day. So it'll be interesting, Dave, what you say about Miami going into a very cold, snowy Kansas City situation. And then Green Bay, Dallas. Dallas has been proven this year. The play in Dallas has been not very good for opponents. That's the one thing there. But you're right, John. Green Bay is well coached. I like their coach a lot. He's had a lot of success. Not so much in the playoffs. I don't think it was all his fault. But it will be a very interesting matchup going on there that way too.
Dude, Monday Night Football, like playoffs, sucks. Like
Horrible.
That's the worst. That's worse than Peacock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you get that game, and then think about it. Like you got to travel, so you're already on a short week, and then next week they don't put you on Monday night. They put you on either Saturday or Sunday. They put you on Saturday in a really short week. Mm-hmm. Sunday it's still a short week. Yeah. That just sucks. Like I don't know why they even do that. Like that's dumb.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous.
If Green Bay and the Rams win, then we get a home game. So there you go.
Yeah, that's it.
So honestly, I think our game's the worst game of the whole playoff. Grouping was. I mean, if I wasn't an Eagles fan, I wouldn't care about it at all.
Yeah, good point.
Mainly because Tampa is just such a boring team. But anyway, yeah, it should be a fun, exciting weekend of good football.
No NFL team has played on 5 Monday nights in a season until this year, and that would be your Philadelphia Eagles. Gentlemen, we're at the hour mark. Do we want to stay on and talk, or do you want to keep going, or jump on to different topics?
I need to, unfortunately, head on out, but
Thanks,
if you
Tom.
guys can keep on going, that's fine.
Sounds good, man. Thanks for joining the original co-host of the Matt Kwasaborski Show. Terrific, Tom Webster. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate you. Talk to you later,
gentlemen. Good luck on Monday.
Thank you. You'll hear about in the chat. Moving on, and John, you brought up hockey this week. The Flyers are all of a sudden back in the headlines for interesting reasons, and I just want to preface this. The Flyers drafted a player named Claude Gauthier with the 5th overall pick last year. It looked like he was going to be a foundation piece for the Flyers. Attends Boston College. Then in the past 2 weeks, the IIHF, or the International Ice Hockey Federation, gentlemen, they have their World Junior Championships. They have their normal championships in May, and they do the juniors now. And Gauthier led the United States team to the gold medal. And USA International Amateur Hockey is really improving. They beat the Swedes, who historically have a great program. And by the way, shout out to Philip and his Czech team finishing 3rd, who upset Canada in that round. So Gauthier is the best player on the United States. Season's over. That tournament's over. He comes back, wants to go to Boston College. Then all of a sudden, blindsided trade. The Flyers trade him, their number 2 overall prospect, out to Anaheim for a very young and promising defenseman, forget his name right now, and a 2025 draft pick. And the story is Gauthier ignored the Flyers brass's calls and said he didn't want to play in Philadelphia. And he's being roasted in Philadelphia Twitter and the media, and we have a new villain. What do you guys think about this?
Billy loves a villain. I love it. You don't want to be here? Fuck them. If I can curse on the Matt Quasborski show.
Absolutely. I don't withhold freedom of speech here.
I think Tort said it the best. He didn't know him as like a hole in the wall. So all right, see ya. And we got the best we could for him. And every time you come to Philly and it's on the calendar, it's going to be like Ben Simmons. Have fun.
Yeah.
You might as well be a healthy scratch.
Yep. You go on mute. John, you're going on mute. Dave, can you talk? You're muted now as well. I don't know why. Give me a little test. I can't. All of a sudden, I can't hear. This happened the last time we did this show, didn't it? So let's. Do you guys want to end and then we'll restart up? Okay. Test. Where is that? Dave, can you talk?
Yeah, can you hear me?
You're back. Yeah, it's really weird. I don't know why this ends like that. It did that last time.
Well, John and I could hear each other, so.
Yeah, for some reason it went out on my end. Before I thought it was the use of the microwave. Apparently that's not it, but that's not a good glitch. Anyway, we talked about Claude Gauthier being the new villain, and like you said, John, screw him, he doesn't want to play in Philadelphia. And there is an interesting topic I want to talk about a little deeper, going to the media. But Dave, what are your thoughts on this guy?
Well, yeah, I mean, before the other night, I'd never heard of the guy, honestly. Didn't know him from a hole in the wall. But, now I'll hate him forever. And so I'm glad they got rid of him, honestly. I mean, same kind of thing as John said. You don't want to be here, then get rid of him. But, I'm sure he'll turn out to be a great player, which will make it even worse.
Well, what I like about it, first of all, they exiled him out to like Anaheim. They didn't trade him like the Rangers or the Blackhawks or the Kings even that had success out there. He'll never be heard of from again. Like we don't know any Anaheim players out there. But the point that I want to talk to was the fact that the entire Flyers brass got out in front of it. We talked about the media earlier about, spinning stories and things like this. The Flyers have new management from top down, former players, Keith Jones, the president. If you're not familiar with Keith Jones, for the listeners, he was a long time. He was only played for the Flyers for 3 or 4 years. Became a mainstay on our morning sports talk show host. Also worked the Flyers games as a analyst, and then also worked on the national hockey broadcast every week. Hardest working guy I've ever seen in hockey. I mean, he would be, in the studios during the Stanley Cup, 12 in the morning is on the 6 a.m., morning show in Philadelphia, drove back. He gets out in front of it. The general manager, another ex-Flyer, Danny Briere, much beloved in Philadelphia. Buffalo gets out in front of it. The coach, Tortorella, said something to some of the players to the fact that, if you don't want to be here, F you, we'll get you out of here. But they got in front of the rest of the media before they could start spinning the stories. And I thought you don't see organizations do that, not just in Philadelphia, but nationally, who are so much out in front like that.
Well, not even just that, man. How about the fact that they were talking to other teams and none of the other teams leaked that? That I think is more of a hat tip to. I think Danny Briere and Keith Jones mentioned that when they were talking to the media yesterday. It's like they congratulated or thanked those other GMs of the league that they kept it, under wraps, because I think that they were concerned that he might be, exiled from the NHL, sort of, in a way. I'm sure at some point they didn't care about that, but
Right.
the fact that that talks were happening and it didn't leak out in today's world, I think is kind of unheard of. But at the same token, I think the Flyers are probably number 4 here in excitement level and probably media attention. But they certainly got the world's attention yesterday with what had happened. And I don't know. I'm not too much of a huge Flyers fan.
Right.
But the things I'm reading about Kevin Hayes, I'm not really sure if you can. You're more of a Flyers fan than I am, but it sounds like there's a little bit of a old player sort of meddling in this as well.
David, what are your thoughts about this? Or anything talking about Kevin Hayes?
I don't know much about that angle. But I agree on the team, the media strategy or whatever. It worked because you didn't get the opposite, which, the national media would have loved to shit on Philly again. And they didn't, right? I mean, I think you're right, Matt. It was because of that. Otherwise, it would have totally been flipped. Flyers came and, no one wants to come to Philly, blah, blah, blah. So, I agree with you. Yeah. But on the reasons behind it, I don't know why he doesn't want to play.
Yeah, so to put apart, the Flyers' new president is Keith Jones, who has a big media presence in Philadelphia, as I mentioned before. And I think his media savvy was like, let's get out in front of this because he knows how the media works, right? Being on WIP, but also working in the national hockey media on TV. And Daniel Barrera is straightforward. How many times do you see general manager? We've had so many Flyers corporate general managers, Chuck Fletcher just buttoned up, doing all the coach speak or all the same speak. Was like, this guy didn't want to be here. And this kid never played in the NHL. He's 19, 20 years old, was turning down calls from the Flyers president, the general manager, the coach, who didn't want to be here. And I know the Flyers shifted organizational leadership, which happens, and maybe that upset him. But they've shifted now to his reputation. Like, Anaheim, you deal with him, and you're going to be exiled. It's like, we're all fans of baseball. We know what the Anaheim Angels or the LA Angels are. People go there and their careers die. They sign these contracts or get these kids. No one hears from them again. And I think it was really smart, and I think it was nice for the Flyers to thank those other teams because those other teams could have leaked while the Flyers are trying to trade him, meaning the compensation would have been lower. Very similar to Sean Jackson leaving Philadelphia. Like, how does getting out there that Deshaun Jackson was a member of the gang sign, Chip Kelly wanted to move on from him, we had to release him and couldn't get even a 6th-round draft pick for Deshaun Jackson because, again, it got out there that the player is bad, but then Philadelphia's trying to move on, and Percy Harvin, if you want to go back to time, he was being shot by Seattle. Seattle trades into the Jets for a first and a 5th-round pick. No one knew Seattle was getting rid of Percy Harvin. But people knew the Eagles were ready to move on from Deshaun, dropped the chances of the Eagles getting compensation. So you're right in the fact that the other teams didn't leak. They could have leaked. Flyers are trying to trade him. Flyers are trying to get rid of their top prospect. Let's lower the compensation. So it was a very brilliant tactic, I think, by everyone.
Can I read you something that just came out about 45 minutes ago from Gautier's advisors?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is 5 sentences, which I think is very telling. We think that this is a private matter and needs to stay private. We understand why people are upset, and people are allowed to be upset and make their own judgment. But on the other hand, when a college player is drafted by an NHL team, there is no entitlement by that team, nor is there a requirement by the player to have to sign there.
True.
It's been interesting how the Flyers brass has handled it. We know people will be upset with Cutter for his whole career, but as you know, in pro sports, you can't please everybody. Now that to me is a very bold statement from a PR person trying to spin this into an entitled 19-year-old POS.
And it is true, the way it's drafted in the NHL, if you're a college player, you can refuse to sign with the team and you become a free agent, unlike if you're drafted out of like a junior program. It's a very sort of, weird rule about college players. Like, they have the right. But at the same time, the Flyers drafted this guy high. He goes to college. It's like in baseball. They can re-enter the draft, right? You draft a pitcher out of high school. He wants to go to the college. He re-enters the draft. That team loses rights for him. The Flyers are trying to stay. Like, we drafted you to be pretty much the face of our franchise or one of them. We're going to do what we can to get out of that. We're just going to let you walk away. He wasn't like a 13th round draft pick. He was a top 5 draft pick, and I think the Flyers did right by their organization.
I think reading that and hearing all of this, and I think it's just kind of like, good riddance at the end of the day. Congratulations to the Flyers, kind of turning things around. But I mean, it's not a good look for this kid. He looks like the bad guy in this, not the organization.
Right.
So for him, he can either do two things: use it as motivation, or he can, be like Ben Simmons and everything be an excuse and a problem.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see how he does it. I know one thing: when he comes to Philly, he won't be. Delco Steaks doesn't want him, and Geno's and Pat's don't want him either. So. Keep your head on a swivel.
Yeah, exactly. It's good to bring some negative outside of the Eagles publicity for negativity besides the Eagles. The two of you, I do want to bring up the Sixers. The two of you are big Sixers fans. John, and I've talked to Dave, offline, but like I tried to get into the Sixers again the other night. I was like, get my mind off of the Eagles, and they lose by 36 to the Knicks. I'm like, what is this team? And I have not been able to get past that Atlanta series. John knows this. Like, I have a very hard time. I did go out and watch the Boston Game 6, Game 7. Bull crap. I'm very happy that Doc Rivers is no longer the coach, but also happy that Simmons and Harden are no longer, because they were more cancerous, off the court than they were on the court. Like, they just were, to me, the same player with not much, too much productivity. But the two of you are ardent Sixers fans, and you watch the team. What do you see under this new regime of Nick Nurse, revitalization of Joel and Maxey?
Well, I think I have a surprising amount of hope that I didn't expect. Honestly, I assumed Joel was out. He's going to be on the Knicks or somewhere after how the offseason went with Harden and all that. But I think, is it Nurse or is it Maxey or is it both of them? But they saved the day by having Maxey play like he is, has given Joel, I think the reason he needed to be happy and stay and play his ass off, which he does now. I know he's been missing a lot of games recently, so I don't know if he's truly got an injury or they're just trying to
he's out
cut back his minutes a little bit.
The same ankle. Yeah, he's missed his 5th game. But anyway.
Yeah, so I think I've got to think a lot of it's Nick Nurse. I did not think Doc Rivers was a good coach. It just seems like the team plays with a lot more pace and flow on offense. And I think Nick Nurse came with an offensive pedigree. And, the guys that got in the Harden trade seem to be pretty good pieces around Embiid. You don't need much more than Maxey and Embiid and some guys you can defend. I'm sure they'll make a deal, and, we can talk about that sort of thing. But, like I said, I think it's Maxey and Nurse together, kind of saving the day, because I truly expected this to be a slog of a season around 500. And Joel just, looking like he was miserable, and that hasn't been the case.
Yeah, I think Maxey's super motivated, and I don't think it's. I mean, he's going to be ready for a contract soon, so I think that certainly helps. But he's been a good player the last couple of years. We've seen it. It's just now someone I guess to sort of push him a little bit more. I think getting rid of Harden, I don't want to call it, he's a ball hog. He's a little bit of a ball hog. I think that helps Maxey tremendously. And if you go back and remember sort of early 2000s basketball, it was Kobe and Shaq. It wasn't a 3-man game. It was a 2-man game, right? So I think having Maxey and Embiid is playing out of his mind. I am one of the more negative fans on Embiid just throughout his career. But he started the season. He's having a hell of a start. Arguably one of the best starts ever in the NBA history. Unfortunately, now with the ankle, I think now he can't miss 9 more games or he's out of the MVP race. At this point, I don't think he wants an MVP. He got that MVP. That motivation is sort of past now. The other part of this whole roster is that they have a lot more depth now. I think Kelly Oubre was a great free agent pickup. He adds some sort of spark off the bench. Patrick Beverly is a guy that I absolutely love on this team and been wishing and hoping for. I thought we were going to get that in PJ Tucker, but Pat Beverly is that guy. He just has that aura, anger, edge to him that I just love.
Mm-hmm.
We have a Morris brother who I always wanted. So we'll see. I mean, I love the depth on the team, and if Joel can continue to put up 40 points a game, this team is destined to be really good. If he can't, and you're going to have to rely on Maxey to do that, but then I think what sort of Dave's hinting at is they're probably going to make a move here because they're going to try to get Tobias Harris off the books, and I think that trade there might be the piece that could hopefully put them over the top this season. It's going to be tough. You really have to hope again that Embiid and Maxey are, Embiid's getting 40, Maxey's 20 to 30, and then you're hoping for a couple other guys to chip in, right? Oubre off the bench, Pat Beverly being scrappy, so on and so forth. I'm excited for them. I know a lot of people now aren't sort of excited because we're in Eagles season, but it's going to pick up here, and I think after the All-Star break, it'll be interesting to see how they really pan out. I think Nick Nurse, so far, so good. The other day, I think he didn't like the way they played the 2-game stretch, so he had them do like a full practice. I love hearing that.
Yeah.
So I'm optimistic. I mean, I'm not putting the launcher on Broad Street yet, but if it's going to be exciting in the playoffs and not be the Atlanta series, I think we'll be okay. We'll see.
If you think they have to upgrade, you said you get a lot of good depth players, but to upgrade, you're going to give up some of that depth. Is there any players around the league that you think would make this team, even better to challenge Milwaukee or Boston? Because to me, they're still a second-tier team. I'm sorry, Milwaukee's ahead of them, Boston's ahead of them. It's like, I remember the old, Dave, you'll remember these, the Charles Barkley, Mike Jaminski, Hersey Hawkins, Johnny Dawkins day. They were just the step below the Jordan Bulls and, the Detroit Pistons at the time. That's what this team still is to me. It's just that step below. They can't get past Boston. Now, of course, there's no Michael Jordan, the greatest player ever there. But, and I liked your analogy of the Kobe Shaq analogy that there's a 2-man player, not a 3 player triangle there. But anyway, long story short, is there players that you think that they could trade for that would upgrade this team? Zach LaVine is a name that's always been floated in the Philadelphia media for like the last couple of years out of the Chicago Bulls, just for example.
I also think – okay, but damn, sorry.
All right, well, I'll start. I was going to say I don't know that I want LaVine just because I think he needs the ball a lot. We don't need another guy who just needs the ball. We got 2 of them, right? I mean, you saw last year with Harden. And I don't think LaVine is known for his defense either. I tell you, I watched the Jazz game. We got Markkanen somehow. Good Lord. That would be unreal. And, we have the pieces to trade. We have picks, and we have a huge expiring contract. So it isn't out of the realm that we could get somebody. I don't know who else might be available. I know, the Knicks already made a trade for Anunoby, and I think the Sixers were looking at him at some point. But yeah, for me, just watching that Jazz game, I thought, man, if we can get Markkanen, I would like us to at least get out of the second round this year.
God willing. I think Pascal Siakam was a name that was thrown around a little bit. I know ties obviously to Nick Nurse. I still think it would be great to have an outside shooter. I know there was talks that Danny Green is still working out with the Sixers. I think he's on the roster. Something going. I saw something about it. I don't know if he's injured, but he's been around the team or something. Not that I'm putting all my hopes and dreams on Danny Green, but give me a Luke Kennard, give me give me someone like that, either a big time rebounder or an outside shooter. I'm happy with just to get a little more offense. I'm looking for a shooter or a rebounder is really what I'm looking for. If Embiid gets banged up, or you want a guy who can be down there rebounding when Embiid's firing up threes, I'd love that. Those would be the two type of guys that I'd like to go after specifically.
Yeah, it goes back to my point, John. You and I talked well before podcast. They gave up too much in the Simmons trade. Drummond and Curry, man. Those two pieces, put them right there on this team. Of course, you have to subtract the player or two that we have, but I still think those two would be great depth pieces for the Sixers. I will say this, the energy is better. You look at a guy like Nick Nurse, he won a championship in the NBA with like one player, name player, Kawhi Leonard.
If he won with Kwame Brown,
yeah. The Lakers did win with Kwame Brown, by the way. I think he won a championship. But Seacom would be interesting because he's a very like loose cannon kind of. You're not really sure how to guard him so well. I know his relationship with Nurse is not the greatest, but that shouldn't matter. If he gets on a winning team and a chance to win another championship, it would be great to see what they could do. And Toronto's not really going anywhere. The Knicks made the move. Therefore they got Adebayo from Toronto. So Toronto's not afraid to trade within the division. Usually you don't see that a lot in sports where they're trading within the division. So Seacom would be interesting. The guy in Utah, Markkanen, would be also an interesting pickup as well. But maybe when Tobias in this new system, I mean, what do you think? Could he be that third piece? No. You have to talk. We're on a podcast. You can't shake your head.
Yeah, I know. I don't think Tobias has it. I'm sorry. He'll have a good game here and there, but he is just not shown that he'll show up enough that you can count on him in the playoffs to be the third guy. So I would say no. I'd include him in any deal they make.
And especially him making, I think he makes like top 15 money. Like he's not, the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? So if you can get out of it and send him to anywhere, but anywhere to the point where you're getting a little bit of value back, right? I don't want to give him away for 2 second-round picks and a bench guy, which they might do just to get him off the books because you get nothing. But primarily, if you really want to make a run here, but I think Nick Nurse isn't a 1-year thing for Nick Nurse. I mean, they're gonna. The long-term thing is he's the coach here for a long time. So hopefully they can put a package together. And I agree with Dave. Like Tobias, he's the first guy that I'm calling about. Anything else that I can get an off with him is cherry.
One name I want to throw out there it's not going over so well in his current location is down in my own home stomping grounds in New Orleans. John, one of your favorite players?
Zion. Oh, I love it.
Pelicans are playing well. They have a talented team, much like Toronto, minus Zion. I'm wondering if I'm wondering if they could pry him away. I think they're a little tired of his act. Yeah. But
I mean, I'd be fine with Zion. Honestly, he's amazing. But obviously he's got his issues, which is why they actually might trade him. But I think he'd be worth taking a chance on with getting rid of Tobias, get him or something.
Yeah. That's a typical. That's a Howie Roseman move. Get a guy who's like he needs a fresh start. He needs to drop a few pounds. Get him on the Sixers, diet, and he's going to turn into a 20-10 guy overnight.
Exactly. Well, gentlemen, great podcast. Give some final thoughts. Wild card weekend. Sum up what you summed up what you thought about the Eagles game, but give me the fourth quarter, the last 2 minutes, what's happening.
I'll start, I guess. It's going to be painful no matter what. Even if we win, it's going to be painful. I do think we'll pull it out. I don't know why. There's no reason for me to think that. But we can't be this bad with the talent we've got, and the coaches have to figure out how to work against a blitz, right? Tampa's going to be blitzing all game long. Can Jalen Hurts please get rid of the ball instead of chucking it to the sideline after he rolls out? Can you make some quick reads or something? I mean, they all know this, and they're professionals. I've got to think they'll figure something out, at least enough to get by that game. So, and then, we'll see how it goes after that. But I'll be happy with the win, honestly, just like always. I mean, I'll be back, convincing myself, maybe there might be a chance.
Love it. John?
The picture in my head is me sweating profusely. Baker Mayfield is driving at the end of the game. They need 3 points to win. It's raining. It's shitty. Baker's rolling out. He throws up a bomb, and somebody's there. Reed Blankenship's there to get an interception for us to win the game. That's it.
Nice.
But we're gonna be on our heels.
Nice. Love it. Appreciate that. Got all the hope. No confidence, but we have the hope they're gonna win. I think
How about you, Matt? How about you?
I got a little Jalen to Dallas Goedert game-winning touchdown right there. That's my thing. I think Tampa's going to take away the outside receivers, but I think Goddard's in for a big game. That's what I think. Cool. It's been the Matt Kwasaborski Show, calling you live and direct from Arlington, Virginia, here with John Mathers in New Jersey, Dave up there near Baltimore. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you later. Again, thanks to all the loyal listeners, and thanks for Al Gore for inventing the internet. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.